Welcome aboard, everybody. Dr. Peter Glidden, your steadfast advocate for health. Check out the live stream, the Dr. Glidden Show.tv, the DRGLIDDEN Show.tv. What is the physician's duty? Inquiring minds want to know. Is it the physician's duty to deliver man-made synthetic pharmaceutical drugs for a profit into a complex biochemical system, the intention of which is to suppress and manage and upregulate and manipulate the biochemistry of the body? Is this the physician's duty? Is it the physician's duty to cause harm? Is it the physician's duty to suppress the active symptomatic processes going on inside a body which has found itself inside a state of disease? Well, if you're an MD, then yes, that's your job. Your job also is to cut away any diseased tissue and to replace that diseased tissue with synthetic material. Just like on Star Trek, half man, half woman, half machine, the rise of the Borg. Well, it's interesting to note that when certain faction of society becomes monopolized, a certain area of society becomes monopolized by a certain faction, then everything goes to hell in a handbasket. And that's exactly what's happened here. My biggest beef with the MDs, or my biggest concern here, and the epitaph on my headstone eventually when I finally die at 225 years of age, I would like to be, Dr. Glidden did his very best to educate people about how MDs think and how holistic physicians think, because this is the biggest problem. Every system of medicine is informed by a philosophical ideation. Every system of medicine has at its very basis, its very foundation, philosophy. And today on Metaphysical Thursday, it's important that we talk about this philosophy, because philosophy is inside of the metaphysical zone, right? It's a member of the aspect of the world, stuff that we can't quantify, stuff that we can't qualify. It's a construct. It's an intellectual construct that we can't codify, measure, or in any way identify as separate and distinct, much like love. If you've ever told somebody that you love them, then you're a practicing metaphysician. You believe in metaphysics. If you believe in God, you believe in metaphysics. So the philosophy that physicians are trained in is extremely important to understand when we are attempting to determine on our own, for ourselves, which system of medicine we should use, right? Because it's good to know this stuff before the fact, because when you're sick, when you're suffering, you are up against it. You're in pain, you're in a fear mode, and you need to know where to go, right? You need to prepare, right? You need to have an escape route planned. You need to know which direction to go before the tornado hits, not while the tornado is approaching. Are you going to attempt to figure it out? So because of the monopolization of the medical market by the faction, the pharmaceutical faction, people here in the United States, people here in North America, people all around the world, the European Union, South America, it's no different. Any industrialized nation, we've all been fed the cultural myth that the MD is the king, and you really just don't need to question anything other than that. Just stop right there, and just when you're sick, go to see the MD, because the MD knows what's best for you. And this is the biggest mistake we make. Such a gigantic mistake that 780,000 people a year are killed because of this mistake. And yet, because the MDs monopolize the marketplace, nothing happens. Nothing changes. Nobody goes to jail. There are no financial, political, or legal consequences. None. well, maybe the pharmaceutical company gives up a couple of $1 million, or maybe at very best $1 billion in damages, but nobody goes to jail. There are no individual consequences for individual human beings, by and large. The philosophy that MDs are trained in is referred to as allopathic reductionism. Allopathic reductionism. The philosophy that I'm trained in is referred to as naturopathic holism. And basically you can reduce medical philosophies into two separate and distinct camps. There are the reductionists and the holists. The only reductionists that practice medicine anywhere in the world in the 21st century are the MDs. Every other medical practitioner anywhere in the world practices holism. Holism argues that the body is a complex system of interrelated parts inhabited by a soul, a spiritual force, some type of unmeasurable energy. And that soul force, that spiritual force, brings intelligence into the physical dynamo of the human body. And it is the intelligence residing inside your body by virtue of your spiritual essence, which dictates every single solitary thing which happens inside the body all of the time. The holistic foundation philosophy, your body has wisdom. Your body knows how to fix itself. Your body is so smart, right? It was able to grow itself all by itself from a single-celled organism into you. There are millions, if not billions, of biochemical processes which are happening every second of every day, which are completely outside of your conscious awareness or control. What's governing all of this stuff? Saw a fascinating documentary the other day on National Geographic about ants. They took leafcutter ant colony from someplace in South America, and they transported it to a lab, and they set up this elaborate system of, they set up this elaborate ant house. And then they filmed it to be able to see what the ants do, and it is unbelievably complex, unbelievably organized, and quite frankly, blows your mind. I mean, in the ant colonies in the wild, there's hundreds of different chambers that the ants build. And they have ventilation tubes to off-gas the carbon dioxide so they don't all die. They have special rooms where they carry the dead. They have special rooms where they store the food. And they have ventilation shafts. And all of this is happening all of the time with millions of ants. Millions of ants, all dancing to the same tune. All completely in sync and in step, and, medical science can't explain this. The science can't explain this. How on earth does this happen? Well, the reductionists look at all of this, and because according to reductionism, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist, so there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as a spiritual force. There's no such thing as prana. There's no such thing as chi. There's no such thing as a vital force which inhabits the physical body of an animal or a man. It's all just chemicals. Chemicals and, biochemistry. That's all that it is. It's all consciousness itself. To the reductionist is a function of biochemistry. And according to them, when your body dies, your consciousness, it's all over. It's lights out. You do not exist as a separate and distinct entity. And this is just insanity at its very heart. It's insanity at its very heart. So when you look at an ant colony, all right, there's no verbal communications, by the way, no verbal communications. How on earth are the ants able to organize themselves to get all of this stuff done, to know what to do, to know to build ventilation chambers, to know that you need to remove the dead bodies, to know that you need to put this food source over here and this food source over here so that they don't cross-contaminate each other? How on earth do these animals know how to do this? Well, the reductionists can't explain it, and they kind of slough it off and say, well, that's just the mystery of nature. That's just instinct. Well, you're a metaphysician if you believe in instinct. I believe in instinct. From the spiritual point of view, from the metaphysical point of view, the animal kingdom is imbued with the same spiritual force that your human body is. There is a difference, however, in the amount of it and in the qualification of it. There's a difference, perhaps, between the soul and between instinct. However, now this is not my area of expertise. I've been trying for a long time to get different religious scholars on here in order to talk about their different philosophical orientations. It's a very difficult thing to do. A lot of people just don't want to do it. A lot of people don't want to stand up in the public forum and talk about, the Catholic point of view, the Buddhist point of view. We got one person, Marshall Govindan, also known as Satchidananda, who's a practicing yogi for 30 years now. We had him on the program a number of years ago. He espouses the Siddhanta point of view. But my point here is that this is not my area of expertise to be able to make these distinctions, right? The difference between a soul and a spirit and instinct and intellect, right? But the point is, you must have some type of idea of what's going on. I mean, when you look at a simple ant colony and you see the complexity of the work that's happening there and the unbelievable sophistication of what this little tiny animal with hardly, I don't even know if they have brains, for goodness sake, but they're able to do it. How on earth are they able to do it? Medical science has no answer for that. And yet, it exists in front of our face. Don't you think it would be important to answer this? Don't you think it would be important at least to have some type of take a stab at it somehow? Well, holistic physicians have recognized these phenomena, right? I always get the phenomenon backwards. These natural phenomena all for, thousands of years. And holistic medical philosophy attempts to understand, at least it takes into consideration, that these natural phenomena exist and that we attempt to draw lines around them to circumscribe our awareness about what's really going on. This is an important point to ponder, ladies and gentlemen. Stick around. I've got much more to say about this when we come back. I'm Dr. Glidden. And guess what? This is Fire Your MD Now. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health. So we need to figure this out, right? We need to have a working understanding of this because it's important. And, whether you believe in philosophy or not, you believe in philosophy because everything has a philosophy. Republicans have a philosophy. The Democrats have a philosophy. There are economic philosophies. There's, everything has a philosophy, a foundation set of principles upon which their entire smorgasbord of ideas is based. It's no different with medicine. Well, the MDs, espousing a reductionistic methodology, are of the opinion that the human body is a coincidental biochemical bag of, nothingness. And consciousness is a function of biochemistry, and when you're sick, it's your biochemical bag is just breaking down, and your only option is to let the MD intervene with their biochemistry. Synthetic, man-made, biochemical, the intention of which is not to fix your problem, but to suppress and manage your symptoms. And this is why you need to fire your medical doctor. Because their therapeutics are juvenile, they're old-fashioned, they're outdated, they're dangerous, and they are completely out of step with what really is happening inside your body-mind. All right, so look at it this way. And by the way, if you ever want to see a medical doctor's head explode, get them to ask them what their definition of health is, and try to see if they can define health for you. You think that a physician would be able to define health, but they can't do it. They can't do it. So, our definition of health is the ability of a living organism to experience stress and remain symptom-free in a state of dynamic equipoise. Now, what the hell does that mean? Well, here's what that means. When your body is in a state of health, everything is working the way that nature intended it to, and everything functions perfectly, and you don't feel anything, right? When the shoe fits, you don't feel it. So your heart's good, your lungs are good, your skin's good, your digestion's good, your concentration's good, everything's good, right? Everything is in its place, functioning the way that nature and God intended it to. All right, now we walk down the road of life and we experience stress, of which there are multitudes, right? Life is a great big bowl of stress. Financial stress, political stress, weather, aging, crap in the air, crap in the food, crap in the water, viruses, bacteria, right? All this stuff, all of the time, right? Stress, baby. So we walk down the road and we experience stress. There are only two outcomes when stress impacts the human body. Outcome number one, the stress hits the body defends against the stress bounces off, and nothing happens to the equilibrium of the body. The body remains symptom-free in a state of active, balanced health. Option number two, the stress is stronger than the defenses of the body. The stress makes it through the defenses of the body and impacts the system. Now, when a stress impacts the system becomes destabilized. And when the system becomes destabilized, it punches out a symptom in order to maintain its equilibrium and balance, right? If I snuck up behind you and tried to push you over, automatically your body would try to adjust and maintain its balance so that you wouldn't fall over, right? Well, your body does the same thing. So your body experiences a stress. The stress overpowers your defenses. The body is destabilized and pushes out a symptom, or two or three. So you have asthma, okay? So you develop an asthmatic presentation of symptoms. Your airways become constricted, and it's hard for you to breathe out. Okay for you to breathe in, but it's hard to breathe out. Okay, this is an active symptom that your body is expressing. Now, what does the MD do? The MD, who knows nothing about the relationship between your body and stress and its presentation of symptoms. Your MD has no understanding about this process whatsoever. All that your MD knows is, hey, you're having trouble breathing, and it's because your airway is constricted. So what does the MD do? Into a complex, sophisticated, living biological system, they deliver a synthetic drug, the intention of which is not to fix the problem, but to suppress the symptom. So they'll give an inhaler, a bronchodilator, and the symptom goes away while the drug is acting in the body. Now, has the inhaler reestablished balance in the system? No. The inhaler has suppressed the symptom. And then the drug wears off and the symptom comes back. You need it again. The drug wears off. The symptom comes back. You need it again. The drug wears off. The symptom comes back. And after a while, the drug stops working. You need another drug or a different drug, or it needs to be increased in potency. Right? Stay with this thought. I'm going to finish it up when we come back and get right to the phones. This is Metaphysical Thursday. I'm going to take license here today. You need to understand this. I'm Dr. Peter Glidden. Stick around. Chat room's heating it up today, folks. Check it out. When you watch the live video stream, you're also entered into a chat room right now. We've got folks from Canada. We've got folks from Australia. We've got folks from the United States. Portugal's in the house. All over the U.S. Man, it's really great. Jim from the United Kingdom is here. So, this is a worldwide phenomenon. And it's a ton of fun. Because while I'm doing my shtick on the radio, the chat room attendees are talking amongst themselves, and it's great. TheDrGliddenshow.tv. Check it out, TheDrGliddenshow.tv. Okay, so here we are. We need to finish up this understanding, right? I'm going to take a little license here. And then Jay from Wyoming is up. I hope to get to Jay before the end of this segment. All right? So, when your system is healthy, from the holistic point of view, it is described as being in a state of a dynamic equilibrium, a symptom-free state of dynamic equilibrium, okay? So you experience a stress that's greater than the system can handle. The stress destabilizes the body, and the body compensates and generates a symptom. And then the MDs march into this complex, sophisticated system, and they suppress the symptom with a drug. And then, the drug wears off, the symptom comes back, they do it again, the drug wears off, the symptom comes back. And after a while, this drug stops working. Why? Because the drug works by virtue of using vitamins and minerals and amino acids and essential fatty acids in the body. So the longer you take a drug, the more deficient in these nutrients you become. It was a deficiency in these nutrients most often that caused the illness in the first place. So the longer you take the drug, actually the unhealthier you will make the system, and this is why the drugs stop working after a fashion and why they need to be increased, or a second or a third drug needs to be added just to get the same type of a response, right? But more to the point, Remember, the action of the drug here is not curative, because your MD, trained in the reductionistic philosophy, is not concerned about how to cure your illness. Nor are they even able to define what cure is. They can't. They have no idea what it is, right? They could say it's the absence of symptoms, but, winter is the absence of summer, but it's a whole lot more than that, isn't it? So, in any event, you've got symptoms, you're in a state of imbalance, dis-ease, you have a symptom, and the MD is frantically suppressing the symptom and, running around like a chicken without its head trying to figure out how to do this. Now, eventually, what will happen in this situation is, under the influence of drug after drug after drug after drug, your body becomes unable to generate this symptom anymore. Remember, the body was generating the symptom in order to maintain its equilibrium and balance. This is a non-intuitive thing to understand, but the symptom that your body is generating, whatever it is, the difficulty breathing, the headache, the skin rash, whatever the symptom is your body's attempt to handle the destabilization from the stress. Your body generates a symptom to compensate. It's a compensating thing that your body is doing of its own free will, okay? So, the MDs suppress the symptom over and over and over again. Pretty soon your body gets flagged out and it can't generate that symptom anymore, so the asthma in this case would magically disappear. So after 6 months of inhalers or 3 years of inhalers, the little child grows out of the asthma, so to speak, right? No longer any asthma, and the MDs pat themselves on their back. Oh, good job, boys. We saved this kid's life. No more asthma. Well, the child didn't grow out of it. The body moved, right? The body has hierarchies. The body has levels of defense, like those old-fashioned castles back in, the 8th century. You have the castle keep, and then you have a wall inside or in the courtyard, and then there's a wall outside of that, and then there's a moat, and then there's another wall, and then there's another moat, and then there's a drawbridge, right? These different levels of defenses. Well, your body also has different levels of defenses that it attempts to generate symptoms on when it's in the state of imbalance. So, initially, the body was destabilized, generated an asthmatic symptom, which the MDs completely suppressed into submission. So now what happens? The body falls further off balance. It has to. It must fall further off balance and generate a symptom somewhere else. So, a couple months after the asthma disappears, the child gets chronic migraine headaches. Or whatever. The child gets chronic bronchitis. The child gets bladder infections. Over and over again, the child gets really painful arthritic knees. Something. Some symptom somewhere else must manifest. It must. Because the imbalance has not been dealt with. It's the only thing that the MDs did was suppress symptoms. And when you suppress a symptom, the energetic expression of the imbalance must come out somewhere else. It has to. It has to come out somewhere else. It's a law of nature. And so, the child goes from asthma to migraine headaches to arthritis to congestive heart failure, and then they die, right, over the course of their life. Illness after illness, chronic illness after chronic illness, strong and persistent symptoms after strong and persistent symptoms, all because the MD screwed it up. How did the MD screw it up? Because the MD had no notion whatsoever about the dynamic equilibrium present inside the body and the sophisticated defense forces that the human body brings to bear on itself. In the face of the stress of life, the MD is clueless about this. And this is why they're so dangerous. And, it doesn't really matter if you understand it and any of the stuff that I'm talking about as far as the details go. But MD therapeutics are the leading cause of death. They're also the leading cause of bankruptcy. And this is why. It's not because they use drugs. It's because they use drugs to suppress symptoms. You can use a drug to push the system back into balance, but the MDs don't do that. They have no idea how to do that. So, what do holistic physicians do? Well, here's what a holistic physician does. The system's in a state of balance and it doesn't have any symptoms. It's healthy. It experiences a stress, becomes destabilized, generates a symptom, rather than suppressing the symptom. A holistic physician delivers a therapeutic, the intention of which is to push the system back into a state of balance. And when the system is pushed back into a state of balance, the symptom disappears. Disappears. It must. This is what every holistic therapeutic attempts. Now, chiropractors attempt to push the system into balance through one particular mechanism. The adjustment of the spine and the normalization of the central nervous system. Traditional Chinese medical doctors and acupuncturists deliver therapeutics that have a different effect on the body, but the goal is the same, to push the system into a state of balance. Homeopathy attempts to push the system into a state of balance. Holistic medical nutrition attempts to push the system into a state of balance. Herbal medicine attempts to push the system into a state of balance. Every single solitary, sophisticated, practical, effective type of medicine in the world works with the human body. The MDs work against it. And because they are clueless about this, they're like children playing with hand grenades. You're going to die. But before you die, you're going to suffer and go bankrupt. And then you're going to die. Meanwhile, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of pain and suffering. Can't sleep through the night without your meds. Can't wake up in the morning without your meds. Don't have any energy. Can't make it through the day. Have to walk through the supermarket on crutches or a hover round. Can't even walk down the damn aisle of the church. Need a medication for your heart. Need a medication for your lungs. Need a medication for your bladder. You're peeing your bed 3 times a night. You're 55 years old and you're peeing the bed. You've got to be kidding me. So, in addition to death and bankruptcy, we've got all this unbelievably horrible quality of life stuff going on. All the time, brought to you by Bus Driver MD. Because their therapeutics have a juvenile philosophy upon which they're built. And because they're in the monopoly, nobody questions their incompetence. Nobody. For goodness sake, Vioxx killed 500,000 people, and where's the public outrage? Did anybody go to jail? Anybody? Anybody? No. Now, if your next door neighbor came over and killed your dog, he'd go to jail, right? But when your medical doctor kills your father, nothing happens. This is because we've all drunk the Kool-Aid. No kidding. And the most important thing here to understand is why I advise people to fire their MD. It's not because I'm mean-spirited. It's not because I'm vindictive. It's not because, an MD stole my high school girlfriend and I've never forgiven him for that. It's got nothing to do with anything that has anything to do with anything other than the simple fact of the matter that MD therapeutics are juvenile, old-fashioned, outdated, and completely inconsistent with what it really means to be a human being. The MDs have thrown the baby out with the bathwater in their genuflection at the altar of reductionism. And by the way, this is also why the MDs are really, really good at surgery. Because surgery is the epitome of reductionism, right? You have a bullet in your arm, heaven forbid. That's reductionism. You need a surgical technique to go into the arm and not mess anything up, pull the bullet out and stitch up the wound and make sure nothing gets infected. That's reductionism. Your bone is split in 6 pieces. You need the reductionist to architecturally put it all back together. That's reductionism. That's why the biggest advances in medicine in the last 100 years have been in the surgical theater. The stuff that an MD can do with surgery now is really awesome, but when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, so whether you need surgery or not, the MD's going to think you need surgery because that's all they know. It's not because they use drugs. It's not because they resort to surgery that we recommend people fire their MDs. It's how they use the drug and their abject misunderstanding of the human body. I mean, really, the metaphor that I keep coming back to, because I haven't found a better one, is they're like colorblind art critics. They're colorblind artists, right? But they don't know they're colorblind. If you hired a colorblind artist to do a family portrait, you would not be surprised if the portrait sucked. All the colors were wrong because they're colorblind. They don't even, it looks good to them, it looks horrible to you. This is the problem. Your MD, by virtue of their philosophical training, their understanding, or lack thereof, of how the human body works, makes them the most dangerous profession on the planet. And this is why, unless you're bleeding to death, unless you really do need surgery, unless you're suffering from some nasty infectious disease, like pneumonia, you need to fire your MD. Because if you do not, you're going to suffer, go bankrupt, and die. Stick around. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Peter Glidden, your steadfast advocate for health. Finally getting to the phones today. Wyoming is up first with Jay. Hey, Jay, thanks for the phone call. You are live.
I've been... are you still on?
Yeah, you're in. You're in, buddy. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I got a bit of static there. Okay, I'm paying attention to the news and with all these immigrants coming over, and I've asked I'm a part of the longevity team, and I've been on the products for months, and I've been watching your webinars and learning a whole lot. And I asked my upline about these immigrants that come over, and there's reports of TB and scabies and what's that other skin disease? The leprosy. And I asked her if there was any webinars on that stuff, and she said, "Well, that would be a really good one, for you to do."
Well, it would be a good one for me to do, but let me just kind of cut right to the chase here, because there's and this kind of opens up a can of worms, but it's an interesting thing to talk about, right? Back in the days of Louis Pasteur, Louis Pasteur was the first guy to discover the fact that there were these little invisible organisms that were causative in the generation of disease, right? The tuberculinum bacterium and, the little, you can see the scabies, little creature. But yeah, leprosy, right? It's caused by a bacterial infection. So when Pasteur discovered that there were these little bugs that caused disease that were related to the genesis of disease, there was a big controversy in his day. There were two basic camps of understanding, and Pasteur was and his followers were of the position that the bug is the thing and the environment of the body is irrelevant. There was a whole nother group of people led by another Frenchman named Beauchamp. And their view was that it's the environment of the body that's everything, and if the environment of the body is strong enough, then the bug is not going to find any place to feed and breed, right? Kind of like if you had a pond in your backyard and the pond was healthy, and there was moving water in the pond, and good water in and bad water out, or a stream, right? No stagnant water. There's going to be no mosquitoes, because mosquitoes breed in stagnant water. And there might be a trillion, gazillion, gigamillion mosquitoes in the world, but because they only breed in stagnant water, if there's no stagnant water around you, there's going to be no mosquitoes around you, right? So now, of course, the pharmaceutical industry loved Pasteur, because his position was, look, it's the bug, and so everything that the conventional medical system has done is try to develop treatments to kill the bug, right? Which is kind of like, flying over the stagnant water and dropping napalm on it to kill all the mosquitoes, rather than fix the pond so that there's fresh water in it, no more standing water. I mean, that's a smarter idea. But so everything that is happening with infectious disease for the last 200 years has been forwarded by the pharmaceutical industry, the intention of which is to kill the bug, right? They have no understanding whatsoever about the importance of the health of the organism. Now, interestingly enough, on Pasteur's deathbed, he recanted his position, and he said it's not the bug, it's the environment of the body. Well, his words, it was the terrain. He said the terrain is everything. So, from our point of view, when you are eliminating the 10 bad foods, and so there's limited extracurricular stress happening to the body every day, when your body is filled to the brim with 90 essential nutrients appropriate for your body weight every single day, when you're salting your food and eating adequate amounts of protein and getting adequate amounts of water and air and exercise, your body's healthy. And it's going to take a nasty-ass bug in order to break through your defenses and make you sick. Or if you do get sick, you're going to recover in half the time that your neighbor who's eating all the wrong stuff all the time and who's running on nutrient fumes will. So in this case, it's not so much the bug as it is the health of your body. Maximize the health of your body, and you're going to have very little to worry about. No kidding. Just maintain your discipline, and thank God for Dr. Wallach. Glidden, Mississippi is up at the top of the second hour. Check out the live stream, thedrgliddenshow.tv.